How often is it in use?
We had 48 bookings last year, 184 days.
I don't even remember how that goes. Hi, I'm going to go ahead and get started early, which is a first for me. I'm Janet Michaelis. I am a host here in Dayton, and I am the host community leader for this region of Ohio for AirBNB. It's not a paid job. So as you probably saw in all the disclaimers, I am not committed to the company line. I'm here to represent you to the company more than the other way around, but there's a balance there. So how many people here are hosts? Most of you. So you probably know most of what I'm going to be talking about. How many people are thinking about becoming hosts or in the process? A couple thinking about it. Okay. Well, this is aimed more for the new people, and then we'll have some of our regular people tell you their stories, and then the rest of the evening is just for Q&A and sharing with each other. So now for the PowerPoint. If you could just quickly, we're going to go around the room, just say your name, if you're a host, where your list of location is, and how long you've been hosting. Guest visitor, same thing, what your interest is in AirBNB. And the press, who you represent. James?
James Nunez, East Dayton. Do you need an address?
No.
Oh.
I know where you live.
You're going to have to talk out, we can't hear him.
Is that it?
Deborah.
I'm Deborah Cole-Lorenz. This is my husband, Gary Lightslow. We've been doing this since 2016, and ours is in Dayton on Wayne Avenue.
Yeah, Mike Skina. I've been hosting since 2017, and mine is on East 3rd Street.
Dave, Kelly, and Caleb, White Ford. We have a place in Linden Heights, and we've been open here for a year and a half, and in Wisconsin since
2014.
yes. If you want to go up north.
Rick Dobson, City of West Carrollton Council. I'm here to learn.
Nate Mundy. I am from the School Board of West Carrollton, also here to learn.
I'm Janice Kammer. I've been doing AirBNB for 7 years, and I also do regular rentals, and that's Walnut Hills.
This is Marhawit Scramonchini. I'm not a host, but in the future I will be. I just do regular rent and rehabs.
My name is Jackie. This is my partner Becky. We've been hosting for about 2 months near the Valley.
My name is Tong Yum, and we started 2020, and we're in South Park.
I am Denise Swick, and I have a property in the Oregon District, and it's been an Airbnb for about a year and a half.
Yeah, I'm Gerald. We've been doing this about 4 years now, since 2018, and it's over at Riverside.
David Bowser, we're in Beaver Creek. We started in 2021.
Oh, hi, I'm Karen. I mainly do rent and hold, and I just started short-term rental in Dayton.
Estella Holmes, just looking at the idea.
And I'm her son, Christian Holmes. I'm just here to learn.
Okay.
Great, thank you. That's
Janet. I'm David Esrati. I'm with Esrati.com, where you'll find this and the video later. I started hosting because Gary told me to do it after my mother went into a nursing home. And that was, I think, in 2017 or 18 I got started, and I have 2 Airbnbs in South Park.
That's the first time he's ever actually done anything I told him to do.
Probably.
I'm Cornelius Froelich. I'm a reporter with the Dayton Daily News.
And Jordan is freelance.
I don't know anything. I'm just here to take photos.
And I'm Janice Provost back here. Daughter
for a couple of months. So this is just a quick rundown of our agenda. This shouldn't take us too long. For any of you who don't know the origin story about Airbnb, it was these three guys in San Francisco who didn't have money for the rent, and there was a convention in town, and they had this idea, we'll rent out a room, and they made the rent. Well, they were prep school kids, they were well connected, and they had tech skills, so it wasn't quite, those garage stories are never quite as simple as they would like you to believe, but it is grown and been very successful. Their business model, if you don't know how it works, is that they have a platform and it connects the people who want a place to stay with the people who have a place to stay, and it empowers that relationship and those transactions. And the way they make their money is they charge a fee at each end, a % off of the person who's listing and of the people who are traveling. And because this requires trust to function, when it first came out, there were a lot of people who said, nobody is going to want to stay with people they don't know or have people in their homes. But there's accountability built into the structure of the system, sort of like with eBay, where you rate each other, and that's public, and so over time, that trust can be built up. And currently, they have 6 million listings worldwide. It was a ridiculously ambitious model that they had, which was to start everywhere all at once in multiple languages, and I think that's part of the reason they were successful, because they are constantly in chaos, and that has become part of the model as well. And sometimes we are on the tail end of that as hosts, but it is constantly evolving, and while they don't respond right away to some host concerns, generally I think they have moved in a good direction to sustain both the everyday hosts and the professional hosts in the long run. So the difference between, for you people who've been doing long-term rentals and landlording on Airbnb, is if you add individualized hospitality to your landlording, that's what makes you a good host. And when you sign up, the platform can walk you through all the steps you need to do technically to get on board online. And more recently, they've added some dedicated support channels, and they can pair you with experienced hosts, and they can also have it so that you get an experienced guest as your first guest, so that you can learn the ropes about how that the rating system goes back and forth. It is complicated. Things that you get by being on the platform: guest ID verification. There is now some built-in reservation screening or blocking for high-risk booking categories. And they've recently increased the damage protection that they provide to hosts to $3 million. And $1 million liability insurance, and 24-hour one-tap safety line. Something that doesn't seem to be very well known at all is the neighborhood support pages and links. Airbnb can't intervene in these problems, and we all hear the anecdotes, etc. And if they don't know when the problems are where they're happening, and that's the same if you're a long-term landlord. I have property in another state, and I want my tenants to be good citizens. But unless somebody tells me, and it's usually not the management company that's going to do it because they don't know either, but the neighbors tell me, then I can intervene. And that's what this part of Airbnb is set up to do. So there is a link that neighbors can tap to have them call you, and it's manned with humans 24/7, supposedly. That's what they say. I haven't had to use it. As far as renting in our county, you are required to register your rental with the county. It's free of charge, and there is a penalty for non-compliance, but it is unenforced as far as I know. just to get an idea of how many rentals there are, this is the rental registry, which you can download, and this is just the section that's for within the city limits. So there's parcel numbers that start with a certain number, they're all within the city limits. And there are 16,737 registered rentals. It's voluntary, and so how accurate that is, Gary Leitzel did a little spot check.
Yeah, let me just jump up, I'll stand right beside Janet. When I looked at that 16,737 number, I decided to look around my neighborhood. And so I brought up an old Sanborn fire insurance map because it shows the plats. And I realized that 70% of the rentals, the red ones, are not registered on the registration. And there's only two reasons people wouldn't register. A, they didn't know the law, or B, they don't want to be found out. And all the registration does is it connects your name and a phone number to that property. If you go to mcrecorder.org and you were to type up an address and click on rental registry, it'll just show you who owns the property. And that's all it is. It doesn't cost anything to do. So if you have an Airbnb, I would seriously recommend you get it registered, because if the city does things going forward, that's the first thing that'll be brought up, I'm sure, and we'll get into that shortly.
So as an Airbnb landlord, you will have to do all the things that long-term, all the rules that you have to comply with to be a good neighbor, etc. Plus, there is a list of things that Airbnb holds you responsible for. And as I said, there's more accountability and more oversight of the condition of my property by virtue of having people in and out of there reporting on it than I have ever had on any of my long-term rentals. So recently, the city of Dayton, this was in December, hired a company called LTAS Technologies. They have a business called Harmari to investigate short-term rentals because they said they had complaints about noise, about parties, about traffic, I'm not sure what all. But Harmari, if you look at their ad, they are selling themselves as revenue. Their ad starts out with, are you sick and tired of leaving tens of thousands of dollars on the table because you're not getting lodging tax dollars? So that company is not in the business of looking at all of the rentals in the city and seeing if there's a correlation anywhere between the problems that you're getting complaints about and then trying to solve the problems where they occur. This company is really just out to get tax revenue for the company and for the city. So stay tuned on that. We have communicated our displeasure to the city government. We will have, our next meetup will be in February on the 21st, Tuesday. If you're in the Facebook group or we have your email, we'll make sure you get an invitation to that. And the city planning department said they would be coming. And now it's story time.
Hey Janet,
The library.
real quick, there are some municipalities that do have more stringent rules and regulations for rentals. For instance, Oakwood does inspect rental properties. I am not sure what West Carrollton does. So there are some municipalities that have inspections for rentals.
Jared.
If they're registered.
Gerald. If they're registered. You going to talk from back here? So we have 3 hosts that were going to tell their stories tonight. This was one that we had a virtual tour during COVID, but not many people. It was like not many people there. So now we have an audience. So I thought, tell the story again. I'll forward it, or you can come up.
Anyway, so Janet asked me just do a quick informal talk about what we do. We have an Airbnb over at Riverside. This is actually in front of the Air Force Museum. We got the home and we have no idea what Airbnb was, and we never had short-term rentals, long-term rentals. So we just saw a good opportunity because it was close to the Air Force Museum, and we said, okay, let's try doing this on Airbnb and see what happens. So we were all new. So we bought this house and we fixed it up. We spent about $20,000 just to fix it up. So we had to do a lot of electrical work because it had some aluminum things, aluminum wiring and things like that. We fixed up the bathroom and we placed insulation in the attic. So, and we painted the outside so it looks a lot better. So, which the neighborhood was surprised because it suddenly looked a lot better. It was just like that. It was white and now it's blue. So we didn't plan it, but it matches the Air Force colors. It was. I tell you the truth, we just wanted like a yellow door and said blue will match, and then across the street you noticed the Air Force logo was blue and yellow, so perfect. So our neighbors, our left neighbor was actually, she wasn't too happy when we started because the color was, she said she didn't like the color, but now she says she likes it. And then we had, of course, guests coming in and out, and our driveway is right beside their house. So sometimes at night, our driveway, when the cars come in, they get disturbed. So they actually told me about it. So of course, good neighbor, I place it on my Airbnb saying, if you come in before 7 a.m. or you use your car after 10 p.m., please don't park in the driveway. So of course, neighbors are happy with that. She's happy. We get along. If I don't know how long do I have. But we have some nice stories because there was early on we didn't know how to screen people, so we had a guest who was going to spend the night. They were from Dayton. Next thing I know, I got a call from the neighbor, and she said, "It looks like you're having a party here." And I was looking at. And she told me, and I went over there. The house is like 800 square feet or 880 square feet. There were like 50 people over there. And it was teenagers. They were drinking and they were smoking inside the house. I told them to go out. I couldn't really force them. I was the only one there. So I just told them, you have to leave, or else I'm going to report this. The neighbor almost called the police, and I just told him, no, I don't want to trouble, just let them get out. So they left around 2, 3 a.m. And the house, they did try to clean up a bit, but of course, there's like alcohol and good thing they didn't smoke, but that's another story. But again, we learned from it. I haven't had a thing like this happen. The neighbor's pretty happy. We have good tenants, good people coming in. They usually come here to visit the museum. Some of them are business people. They visit or they work at the base. They have sons at the base who are training. A lot of them come for soccer games. So it's been a good thing, and I think for us, before the house was basically not being used, nobody was using it. It didn't really look good. It was kind of maintained, but yeah. But now, I can say that we're maintaining this house. Of course, we want the guests to have the best rating. To give us a good rating, we want to have the best service, and that was our goal. We want to have a cheap place in Dayton for people, like families, to stay. And I think we're doing a good job, and hopefully we'll continue on. And I'm hoping we get another one, but I haven't had the funds yet to start another one. So hopefully other hosts will get the idea and continue Airbnb. It's a good thing. It's some extra money. By the way, my son is now actually cleaning it. He's in college. When he got a car, I told him, you want to pay off your car, I'll pay you $150 a month, you do the cleaning. And that's paying off his car right now. He's 3 years in. So he'll be done paying off his car in 6 months. So it's a win-win. He cleans the home, he learns the business, and he pays off his car. So it's a good fun.
What's your average nightly rate for that?
This one?
Yeah.
It's about $84 now on Airbnb.
84?
84, yeah. And our cleaning is about 35 because it's for my son. So I just give it to him. So,
Okay. We didn't show those.
We did not rehearse this.
No, I know. Okay.
There you go. We didn't rehearse this either.
Okay. Ours, if you go to the Airbnb platform, ours is listed as Helen's House Granny Chic. So our story is in 2013, my 92-year-old neighbor who had lived in her house for 88 years called me up and asked me if I'd buy her house because she had to go to Sycamore Glen because she'd fallen down the stairs a couple of times and then ended up in the hospital. I had been in the house and I had seen that the woodwork was original from 1900. The wallpaper was there from the 1930s. While she was living there, she was a bit of a hoarder, but she maintained this house in pristine condition. That's Helen when she was about 16, and we even bought her piano off of her she bought in 1940, and I have a receipt and a checkbook that confirms that. I did not want some out-of-state investor buying this house, stripping all the woodwork to recoup their investment, paint the whole thing white, and put some tenant in there that could have been a problem because we have a rental 2 doors down from it that has been a rental problem for the last 21 years for us. It's been sold and resold 11 times in the last 21 years.
Wow.
So we did not want that to happen. So when you walk in the house, that is what you see. That's the parlor. There's a tin ceiling, which is really nice. And this is as we were acquiring furniture. There's the cupboard full of, in the dining room, full of plates and cups and things. That's the one bedroom. There's 2 bedrooms in it, 2 bathrooms. Again, the house was built in 1900. We acquired the vacant lot next door from the city's real estate acquisition program. That was the house when we bought it. That's what it looks like now from the front. I still have to paint the very back. And I just put these raised beds in last year, so our guests can pick tomatoes, peppers, arugula, whatever's growing, and add it to their diet when they're there. And I was over at the Goodwill bins, and I acquired about 500 of these little red hippos that were for a little math calculating thing. So we devised a game for our guests. So they go through all the drawers, and they see that there are pencils, pens, magnifying glasses, calculators, blankets, bottles, whatever. They can root through the whole house so they don't have to call me and say, hey, are there any extra blankets here? Or where are the extra towels? So we've devised this game, and sometimes they leave a little note saying, I'm sorry I only found 4 hippos, but they get to keep them because I've got bags of them. We've been doing this, we bought it in 2013, we started it as an Airbnb in 2016. For those interested, last year we had 48 guests, 48 bookings over 184 days total. And so our average price, dividing what we made, was about $98 a night, but our listing usually shows 90. But there is a smart listing feature that Airbnb has, and they've been doing this long enough that they know what weekends are busy. So when we have UD graduation, that rate might go up to $110 over the weekend. And we don't control that, it's controlled by Airbnb. We're on Wayne Avenue, we are so close to UD that most of our guests are associated with UD in some way, shape, or form. But we had some Amish contractors when COVID first hit that were there for about 3 months. So did James too, right? They were building a house on the west side, and they were only from Columbus, but they didn't, we had COVID restrictions, and they felt good in the house. We've also had a couple of movies filmed in that house, small, short movies done. So it's been fun. We didn't do it to get rich. We did it to protect my block from people that I don't want living there or renting. So, all right. Any questions? Good.
And one last storyteller.
name's Mike Skeena. I've been a host since 2017. I'm currently fixing up this place on 3rd Street, on East 3rd Street. This is just what I'm working on right now, but actually did this same thing to another building in South Park before I worked on this, and I've also rehabbed most of the other properties that I have that are rentals. This is a triplex. It's one commercial unit downstairs, and it's got 2 apartments upstairs. And so when I bought this building, it was not a productive housing unit. It had no utilities, no natural gas, no electric, had no heating and air. I mean, it was a shell of a building with absolutely nothing. So it wasn't serving anyone. No one was living there. It was a net gain of 2 housing units. So the place was a mess. But I saw something in it. My wife and I, we saw something in it we liked, and we decided to take it on. So we worked on it for quite a long time. We just recently now completed the downstairs, which is the commercial portion of it, and the upstairs is, the 2 apartments are probably 75% done, almost done. So yeah, so it looks like everyone's here is either a host or interested in being a host. I was kind of thinking we'd also be talking to people from the city of Dayton and kind of hearing what they were thinking about Airbnb, but it doesn't seem like any of them are here. So anyway, one of the things I was supposed to talk about was just government kind of overregulation and really the real world consequences of that. And so before I get into that really briefly, I just want to give a little bit more of my background. I used to be a weapons system cost estimator for the Air Force, and my job was basically to build gigantic cost models about DoD stuff and what it would cost to buy it, to maintain it, and get rid of it. So the life cycle cost. So I was really good at numbers and making giant spreadsheets and just calculating things. I've also built a house from the ground up in a county that has no building codes. And then I've done this, which is a commercial, residential, mixed use, fully permitted rehab. So that's not some kind of weird flex. What I'm getting at is I'm uniquely qualified to understand how much extra money all this regulation costs us and what we get from it. And what we get from it varies depending on where you are on your skill level, but what I will say is we're overpaying for the illusion of safety. So I'm getting to these pictures in a roundabout way. So basically, this is a mop sink. I had made a video and I sent it to Janet as like kind of an example of what I was doing. And in this video, I was like ranting about this mop sink, which just happened to be the latest example of regulation that had kind of got on my nerves. And basically, if you look at my place, it's all hardwood floors. I've got a 5x8 section of tile that I could actually mop, but when we submitted our plans, we submitted them without a mop sink because I have no use for a mop sink, and they got rejected. They sent them back, had to redraw them with a mop sink, and so now I've got this weird floor level sink that I could actually use that sink on the left, but that doesn't qualify. I had to have this sink. And honestly, this isn't even the best example because it's not super expensive. It was $500 to buy the sink. It was an hour and a half to go get it, and probably $1,000 for the plumber to put it in. Because they don't just have to put it in, they got to do the rough plumbing for it too, because remember, I had no plumbing, I had no drains, I had no water supply. So that was like kind of just a very tiny example of ways that that costs just get added on that don't serve anyone. And why is this important? Because we as landlords and hosts, what happens when the price of housing gets high? It gets blamed on us. I mean, it's the greedy landlords, and we're just jacking the rent up, or it's the investors, and there's this big elephant in the room of why things are expensive, but we're looking over here blaming you know, the person that's probably not responsible for it. And think about things like this, just amortized over the life of a loan, every aspect of a rehab. Like even, you can barely see in the screen next to it is a furnace. This is a good one. You guys are gonna have to stop me because I could probably do this a long time. But so look at that furnace, right? I've installed 2 of those. I've installed 5 mini splits. They're not like, it's not super complex, it's not super hard to do. I would probably order one online, cost me about $3,000. I'd have to spend maybe another $500 to buy the line set, some wire, disconnect. And I have a furnace, I have heat. This is my shop, this is the downstairs, this is the commercial portion of it. But I'm not allowed to install this furnace myself, so I've got to get a contractor to do it. So now my $3,500 furnace is $9,000, right? But we're not done. This is a commercial unit. So my contractor, who installs furnaces all day and every day, he can't just go and put in a furnace in my unit because it's got to be designed by an engineer. So now my contractor, I have to take my contractor's plans, I have to give them to the engineer has to draw them out and put his stamp on it and charge me $2,500 for engineered drawings. So now my $3,500 furnace is, I don't know, I can't even have what it up is, but it's a lot more than $3,500.
You're the math guy.
I used a calculator and an Excel spreadsheet. I never did stuff in my head. But that's just, that's just HVAC. And then you've got everything else. There's just so many aspects of a rehab. And so anyway.
They want you to tear the buildings down because
Yeah.
they get money from demolition companies and from landfill operators to keep reelecting the politicians.
But, so these,
That's the real business model of the city of Dayton and half the county. We gotta fund the guys who tear shit down.
So let's bring this back to Airbnb. The reason this is relevant is, and the reason why I was hoping that someone from the city would be here is because these buildings are tweeners. You can't really have a successful investment in something this size. It needs to be either the scale of something that a big contractor can take on, or something that a flipper can do under the radar without permits. But like the stuff for like normal citizens, it's incredibly hard to be profitable on our scale. And that's why Airbnb is important to me, because it's an opportunity for a normal citizen to start a successful business and earn a living on a scale that's attainable. I can't start a hotel. I don't have the capital to go out and start a hotel, but I can get a house. I can get a loan and get a house. But
Could you get a loan on that building, Mike?
No, no, this is
See,
entirely
this is another problem.
Yeah,
The banks won't loan to
I
you.
can't even get insurance. I don't have insurance on it.
The banks won't loan to you. The banks won't loan, even when it's done, they don't consider it this Airbnb rent, which is way bigger than the regular rent in 25 years of my rental history, and they still tell me the property's not worth anything despite the cash flows. The banks don't want these things to work, and you get no help.
So, you have made multiple uses of this. This is our final slide. So he's taken that building, you saw
Yeah.
what it looked like in the beginning, and even though it's not finished,
So we had an art gallery, 4 world-renowned photographers that are based right here in Dayton actually had an exhibit in the building, and we had a meeting of the Western Ohio Woodworkers Club, and it's a productive building now, and it's going to be even more productive when it's done.
Is the city making you put sprinklers in, or do you have a concrete floor?
Oh my gosh, you shouldn't have asked that question.
Well,
I'm going to talk about that for another 10
we
minutes.
didn't talk about that.
No, but I did have to do 2 layers of 5/8 drywall
To create a firewall.
to make my brick building fire safe. Yes, 2 layers of 5/8. And by the way, it's my building, Strata Cash, fire department.
Probably got a fire hydrant right outside too.
Yeah, probably do.
thanks. Well, Mike is the last person who had a story that had slides to go with it. Is there anybody else who has a story they particularly want to tell?
I'd like to. So, when I bought my house in South Park, for $14,500. It had been on the market for 2 years. It started out at $22,900. It was $17,900 when I went and looked at it, and I bought it for $14,500. That price is lower than I could have bought a nice car for, new. My house was a wreck. What's the first thing the city does? They take me to court for putting up the wrong kind of garage doors while they had a steel and plastic dumpster behind me. They have done nothing to help me in my neighborhood, where I now have Rehab 5 and I'm about to go on a 6th project. All have won awards. They have done nothing to help. They've done everything to hinder. And I'm going to give you the example of the 2 cottages that I bought. I bought these 2 cottages in 1995. They had been Section 8 for I don't know how long. They used to be owned by a woman who didn't care, and then they were bought by Javad Asgir Bazubirobaduba. I can't remember how to pronounce his whole name. He now owns the Talbot Tower. He got all kinds of money from the city. He got money, he was getting paid ridiculous money for a defunct plaza he owned on Germantown, on Gettysburg, that the city was paying $10,000 a month in rent for the Northwest Priority Board. This guy had them. I bought 2 of them after I watched him mess up one where he fixed it up and sold it for $35,000. And people had told me when I bought my house that those 3 little cottages across the street would ruin the value of my house forever. That was what they said. And literally the 2 that were left, I had one woman living in there with 3 children, all malnourished. She was like 300 pounds. There was garbage everywhere. The other one, they cut a hole in the back of the house to be able to sell the drugs without having to open the door. Okay? Right off the kitchen counter. It was like a pass-through. And the traffic was nonstop. They did nothing to enforce the law. They did nothing to make sure that the neighborhood was safe. Wasn't clean. When I first walked into 120 Bonner, after I had to leave the tenant in there for a couple months, she had moved out. I walked in, she didn't tell me she'd moved out. Clump of dirt fell, hit me in the hat. I go like this, it falls to the ground, and then it scattered. Cockroaches. There were so many cockroaches in that house, it was unbelievable. These are the living conditions that were okay with the city of Dayton for the first 20 years that I lived there. This is what I was living across from, squalor. So I start gutting them down to the studs, redoing them. They're up my butt about drawings, about inspections. In fact, they came in once, I had all the insulation in, and it was craft faced, R11, on the walls, all stapled down, overlapped. They told us, craft face is no good, you gotta take that down and put up visqueen. I pulled up National Building Code and I said, no, just go take along. They didn't do anything more. I rented those 2 cottages for about $500 a month and then $600 a month for 25 years. I was a good landlord. I had good tenants. And by the way, Javad came by one time when I showed him what the first one looked like fish. He says, why you do all this? Why you do all this? They cash flow great. I looked at him, I said, I wouldn't ever rent something that I wouldn't live in. Yeah. So I fixed these up. The last tenant in 120 was my parents, who lived there for 10 years before my dad died and my mother had to go in the nursing home. I had another tenant, and the other one had been there for 6 years. He was the merch guy for the breeders. So I had rock stars coming in and out of my cottage. It was kind of cool. But as Airbnbs, I didn't want to make them both Airbnbs. I made one an Airbnb because I wanted to be able to walk into my parents' furniture instead of having to sell it all off and feel like there was some connection still to them in this cottage. It still feels good walking in there when I see their furniture, my dad's chair, their dining room table, and it gives me a connection because I have no more family. That was it. So it's been cathartic for me. My parents were world travelers, and I've got some of their travel books in there, and I ask everybody to leave notes in the journal, and I love reading those. but people have been showing up from all over the world. I've had visiting nurses, I've had med school interns, I've had people from the base, countless UD parents. I've had a woman who was a composer who just wanted to go someplace and quiet and sit and compose music. I allow dogs, I allow pets, which is rare for Airbnbs. I don't like the way Airbnb charges for pets. It's one-time fee, it doesn't matter how many pets. I would rather have dollars per pet per night, because if you've looked at the price of boarding, it's really high. So I charge $25 pet fee, and if you stay for more than 30 days with a pet, you pay $139 for carpet cleaning. And nobody's complained about that yet. But then I don't charge a cleaning fee. I got, in 120, I charge $99 a night. In 122, I charge $119 a night. There are discounts for longer stays. I've 5 stars all the way. I've had 300 hosts. But when it came time to put new roofs on both of them, the bank wouldn't give me a loan. They wouldn't recognize the value of these homes. I put 4 metal roofs on. I had to remortgage the house. They valued it at about 2/3 of what it should have been. And I'm still behind because of the way banks look at these things. And in the meantime, while I abided by all the historic district ordinances and doing these, I'm looking at flipping houses and putting full view modern doors on historic homes, putting hardy plank on the outside of the houses instead of 104 siding, and this is okay with the city. I live across the street from these Airbnbs. None of my neighbors have had a problem ever with the people there. But at 121 Bonner, I've had shootings in the backyard. They've had multiple police calls going on for 10 years now. The city doesn't do a damn thing. They own the house. This idea that Airbnbs are somehow detrimental to the community when the city does more damage to our values by limiting and forcing all these crazy rules like Mike was telling you, instead of supporting this, is insane. Airbnb does a really good job of regulating the guests, and the few times I have had problems, those people aren't going to be getting hosted again anywhere, because I write a review that says, don't do it. So that's my story. Last year, between the two of them, I brought in $46,000, which is way more than about the $19,000 that I would have brought from regular rents. Now again, I had to pay insurance, utilities, internet. I have to furnish them, I have to clean them, and again, I don't charge a cleaning fee, which I probably should, but I don't. I have it all up front. So there you have it.
Now we have our Q&A. Does anyone have any questions for any of the people who told their stories or anything in particular? Otherwise.
Hi, so one of my questions is, does Airbnb have their own set of regulations, or is it just the cities that have their regulations? Airbnb does?
Yes.
Are they, I'm sure they must be a lot more lighter on the side of regulations than the cities are, or?
Well, like smoke alarms, and was it clean? So there's somebody, think about it, there's somebody who comes in and rats you out
Yeah.
every time you have a visitor, potentially, if there's a problem. And they review us as well as us reviewing the guests.
There's a whole list of amenities that you have to put on that you actually have, you know.
Yeah.
And so the guests can see that before they book. You know, washing machine, microwave, cleaning products, smoke alarm, CO2.
Handicapped accessibility questions, safe for children under 2. Do you have a carbon monoxide detector? Do you have an alarm? Do you have video surveillance is asked, inside or outside the building?
But none of those are
None of them have to be
Yeah, they're just
cleaned. Those are
suggestions.
amenities
I
that
see.
you
Yeah,
can
the
have, that you
amenities
can
are
offer.
separate, but
It's your
there's
choice.
basic safety.
Yeah.
Oh, very neat. And then,
They actually supply, they have a carbon monoxide program, detector program for hosts because they think it's important.
yeah, as they should. And then my other question is, you mentioned earlier about the one-tap safety line. What, I don't know what that is. What is it?
It's just,
Like
one
a
of those-
police button?
no, I think it's just on the screen.
Oh,
That's their buzzword for it, but it's a thing where they call you back.
oh, okay.
There are levels of urgency with which you can report things, and so they've tried to shorten that time so that you're not, more like a 911 call, but not that kind of a local thing. Like I'm having a problem with this house that isn't a 911 issue, but urgent.
Yeah, if you go to AirBNB.com, at the bottom right of the page, there's a link that says support and resources. And if you click that, the bottom of the left-hand page, or the bottom left of the page, it says report a neighborhood concern. And so you can click that. I mean, there's no reason for neighbors to complain to city councils.
Yeah.
Because the city council can't do anything unless there's a call for service.
Yeah.
But they can directly notify Airbnb, and someone will get hold of that host immediately, and then that host is sent out, or their management company or whatever is sent out to deal with the problem, at which point if they have to make a call for service, it'll get recorded. But the reality is it's there, and I think municipalities need to be aware that it's there so they can make that information public, because the host can resolve the problem a lot quicker than anybody else can.
Yeah. And the consequence for the host can be that your listing is turned off, like then.
Right.
Instant.
You vanish
Yeah.
from the platform.
As a homeowner, I can have 10 friends over every day, take up all the parking in the street. We could be playing Dungeons and Dragons in the basement, right? For 10 hours every day. And as long as there's no calls for service, there's nothing anyone can do. But if I have a party as a guest, and they find out, I'm off the platform immediately.
Wow.
So
You have to
it's
define
self-regulated.
Mm.
And I could rent a house to anybody
You have to define
with a lease,
party.
and they could have a wild party every day of the week, and there's nothing I could do unless it's specifically in my rental agreement. And
also
most
depending-
rental agreements don't have that.
Calls for service too.
Yeah, and calls for service. So you can't do that with Airbnb.
You had mentioned earlier that the city of Oakwood in the city of, was it West Carrollton? That if you have an Airbnb, that you have to have inspections?
Now, if you have a rental, a regular rental.
Oh, a regular rental?
Yeah, because Oakwood right now has restrictions on Airbnbs, and West Carrollton is considering it.
Uh-huh. So it's a rental in those areas? Because I thought I had heard at one point that the city of Oakwood was actually being sued for requiring inspections, and that they were folks
They did get
they had to
sued,
get money back.
and they lost. And yes, that just happened.
Those were pre-sales. They were inspecting properties that were for sale, and it was unconstitutional because a government inspector was required to go into the property to inspect it, and that's unconstitutional. Anytime a government, I can tell you that I read West Carrollton's, I don't know if you're aware of this, but they say that their inspector has the right to go into your property. He doesn't. He has to have a warrant. And they do have that, they do cover that later on, that he can get a warrant. But yeah, they have an inspection, mainly the outside in West Carrollton, of properties. But your language specifically states that your building inspector has the right to go in, and he doesn't.
I'll have to look at that.
Yeah, I research this stuff when we get called on it. Oakwood has a current ban on Airbnbs or short-term rentals that has to be 29 days or longer. And West Carrollton currently has a moratorium which says that they won't issue permits to people renovating property with the intention of short-term renting them. However, it doesn't stop you as a landlord, if your house is up to code and everything, from converting it from one to the other. So it's just, they're preventing their staff from passing out permits. So it doesn't.
29 days or longer.
In Oakwood.
In Oakwood.
Now, we can tell you this too. Last year, House Bill 563 was introduced, which would prevent municipalities from banning STRs altogether. And if they impose regulation, it had to be commensurate with long-term rentals. They had a lot of stuff they had to vote on last year, so it got kind of pushed away. We have it on good authority. It's going to be reintroduced this year under a new bill number. It may have bigger teeth, so it may be better for those of us who have Airbnbs. And we have it on good authority. We spoke to our local state representative here, and he said he's going to support it, the new bill. So, as hopefully we'll get more information on that in the next month or so. So, and we have I don't know, did they have to be host to join your page, right?
Yes, so this position that I have is as the Facebook group moderator. And that is really the only communication that I can have directly with people, unless like you sign in here and I can get your email, because the company doesn't provide a way for us to connect with each other formally except through that Facebook page. And you know, a lot of people aren't on Facebook, a lot of people are never going to go on Facebook, but that is what they have used because it's easy for them to scale, it's already built in. And
so we have two Facebook pages locally. One that I'm the administrator of, which is you can blast Airbnb, you can say whatever you want to a smaller group of people than she has. Janet's group is basically administered by an Airbnb staff member. So she had a fight to get them to put this notification out to send to everybody to let you know that we were going to do this. My page is called the Miami Valley Airbnb Host Community page. And a lot of it is, hey, we've got a repeat guest coming, but we're booked that weekend. Is anybody available? Or it's, oh, here's so-and-so, he's local, don't take him on as a guest. A lot of it's just communication between.
Or do you know a good cleaning company?
Yeah,
or
anybody
a person, or
You said Miami Valley Airbnb.
the host community page.
that's the unofficial.
Gonna-
So
that's
it's
not-
the official group.
That's the
and I think
unofficial.
most of the official
It's the
people
one
are
I
also
started
in.
when Oakwood banned Airbnbs. When we heard about this, with short-term rentals, I was using the platform to notify people that I knew had short-term rentals, and Airbnb actually cut me off for about 30 minutes till they realized what I was doing, because they thought I was spamming the system, and I was just trying to get people to show up at the Oakwood Council. And so after that, I created this page and invited people that I knew, and we're letting people know that it's there. It's basically information. You can ask questions. That when you sign in, you have to answer 3 questions. If you have an Airbnb, what's it called? Something else, and then will you advocate?
Gary, can you tell them about the woman in Oakwood with her apartment over the garage?
Yeah, it's Kate.
Yeah.
She lives in
Stand
a
up.
house, and she has I guess was an in-laws cottage above their garage that her son lived in while he was at college. She now can no longer have that as a regular short-term rental. She has to advertise it on the platform as 29 days or more.
And it was helping her pay her very high Oakwood property taxes because she's now retired,
Right.
and her husband's retired, and they're on a fixed income. Yet the taxes keep going up for schools and everything else. So,
So Janet and I are probably, we're the two that talked to Airbnb, right, about making this a state issue. So they finally got some lobbyists to talk to the state representatives that introduced House Bill 563. So we've been on this issue about regulation for 6 years at least. And we have a very good group of people, David, myself, Janet, James, and his wife. We're all considered in this city to be activists to a degree. I'm a former mayor, if you didn't recognize the name. And so Shelley Dickstein said she'd be here tonight, the city manager, and you can see she's not coming, right? She was going to be here for 45 minutes. The next meeting on the 21st, I have been assured that Tony Kroger and somebody else from the planning department are coming. They are interested in hearing our stories because they have no clue what they're doing with this regulation, and they told me that on the phone. So we don't know what we're doing, so we hired a company.
They could have asked.
Maybe they should have asked you.
Yeah.
Well, the point is, you don't need to hire the company because Airbnb has it all already available.
This has happened in cities across the country.
I mean, I can tell you, you go onto Airbnb.com and you type in Dayton, Ohio, 2 adults, I'm flexible, and it brings up a map. And there are approximately 520 Airbnbs in the county. There's 260 in the city, right? And we showed you there's probably 40,000 unregistered rentals. You know, if 70% of the ones in my block aren't registered, and only 16,000 are, that's 28% of the total. There's a lot that aren't, and they want to worry about 260 when they've got 40,000 that they don't even know about. So this is the information we're trying to provide people with, so that going forward, we just make sure that municipalities have accurate information from both sides of the fence, because most of the times they just hear people complaining about, I'm worried about parties, I'm worried about drugs, I'm worried about prostitution. You're going to get more of that in a long-term rental than you ever will.
You're going to get more of some of that stuff at a hotel.
Right, or a motel.
Or a motel.
Right. So, I mean, Jan will tell you, these are anecdotal. There's no evidence, no proof that it goes on. And when there's a shooting, Jan, what do you say? The media never says it was not a short-term rental. There was a shooting at this address. Oh, by the way, it's not on Airbnb. But if it was on Airbnb, headlines, right? And
Like
so,
I said, there was a shooting behind my neighbors, 2 doors down, and it lost me tenants.
right. So
But the city doesn't do anything about that.
So, yeah, so I mean, these are just things that, you know, the media plays up. The one place in Florida where the deck collapsed, right? A lot of people were hurt, but there was a notice that said no more than 10 people on the deck. But
We had that happen at a UD house.
Right.
One of the UD homes, all the kids were dancing on the floor, and the floor fell through. Okay? Do you realize the biggest short-term rental person in Dayton is the University of Dayton? That there are laws against more than 3 unrelated people living in the city of Dayton, in a house in the city of Dayton, but it doesn't apply to UD.
But state law says hotels and student housing doesn't have to register. But I'll tell you this too, you know, doing this research, I spent a couple of hours researching, just so you know, and it's a shame that the city of Dayton doesn't have anyone here, but Water Street apartments aren't registered, Delco Lofts aren't registered, the Landing apartments aren't registered, Woodman Park apartments aren't registered. UD's building the flight at Dayton.com. They'll probably hide it under as a nonprofit.
It's not UD building, it's private.
Yes, but it's going to be apartments. They need to pay taxes as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's private developer, it should.
Right. Centerfield Flats. Oh, Belmont Park isn't registered, right? And 978 Irving Avenue. UD owns 43% of the condos, and I think 35% of the flats. Theirs aren't registered, and they don't pay taxes, but the people that own the condos do. Right? But then they market them as apartments. So these are just things that are way, way, way more important, in my opinion, for our city staff.
I'm not finding your, what, Miami Valley Airbnb host?
I'll see if I can find it.
So I think ours is called Cincinnati area, because we were Dayton, and then they redid the map in San Francisco and decided
I
that
also posted out
Cincinnati
a warning to
close
people,
enough.
it didn't make it out.
So,
It didn't block it.
It's
very-
Miami Valley
very-
Airspace BNB.
Is that what it is?
He did the space in the.
Sorry.
Okay.
So unless anyone has anything else you,
Miami Valley
burning
Airspace BNB
What was our
host
next meeting date?
community page.
The 21st.
21st, and we have your, if you put your email down, we'll make sure you get an email, even if you're not on the Facebook group,
Airspace
and I
BNB
have all
host.
those other ways.
Found it?
Airspace BNB
Yeah, air.
and then host.
And that's it.
No, it's community
Community
page. It's a really long name.
Right. Well,
He's
I was in a
English.
hurry. We had to deal with Oakwood. You were there.
I was there.
Yeah.
Are there anyone here that does short-term rentals for nurses?
For what?
Nurses? We've all
Yeah,
had nurses.
all of
I
us have
think.
had nurses.
But not specifically.
Sometimes they're 3 or 4 days, sometimes they're 28. It varies.
Did you find it?
I had one woman that was going for 4 days, leaving for 2, coming back for 4, leaving for 2. And I'm like, you know, it'll be cheaper if you just book it straight through and get the discounted long rate. And so she did that.
I've got a nurse right now.
Yeah. Is there special what? No, there is not special zoning required.
Well, you know, that's another thing.
It's a
that-
residential unit, so it's under residential zoning.
This is another thing that people aren't aware of. I think it's pretty much every neighborhood in Dayton, I can have an adult boarding house. I could have 5 ex-felons, it's permitted use. I could have 5 former trafficked people, sex trafficked people, it's a permitted use. I can have 5 former drug addicts in a house, and it's a permitted use, according to the City of Dayton Code. So, I mean, and people are worried about short-term rentals.
One other question, are there anyone that does insurance cases? You know, like people whose homes are burnt down and the insurance.
I've had an
company pays?
insurance adjuster come up after a storm and work out of my house.
But you've not had insurance cases as individuals who stay in your house through the insurance company, they
Through
pay
Airbnb, you mean they did some damage?
Short term, no. Say for instance, somebody had a damage to their place, insurance companies contact you, and then the insurance company is the one who pays you for the individual staying in your house.
No, I
until
haven't had,
they're-
it's through individuals. You get,
I've had that experience through working for Hyatt, but yeah, we're generally not reached out to by a third party to then, you generally actually don't want to accept a third party.
yeah, you want it to be an individual responsible. They have a profile. They can turn in for reimbursement to their insurance company. I've had people between homes. I've had
Yeah.
people when they're having their home renovated. I've had all kinds of instances where people have stayed anywhere from 4 days to 6 weeks because they can't get into their house at the time.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there
They do it and then they submit their receipts.
Okay,
You don't book with a corporation. It's individuals.
Now,
why is that?
Because that's who you're holding liable, who you're writing the review of. That's the whole premise of Airbnb.
No, I'm not talking about Airbnb, I'm talking about just short-term rental that's outside of Airbnb.
We're not talking about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone here does VRBO or anything like that. We don't.
Okay. That's-
There's a real good reason to keep it through Airbnb and not do it on your own. Unless you know the person, your insurance company will not cover the coverage. That's where Airbnb kicks in. If they came into your house and they set it on fire, good luck getting it paid if it was a short term and you don't have that extra.
But you can, when somebody's staying in your house and the insurance company is actually the one paying for those individuals to stay in your place,
I don't care where the money comes from.
you can.
I don't care where the money comes from. I don't need to know that. That's not part of the
Yeah,
deal.
yeah.
Okay? We rent to individuals, not friends of the individual, not their dad, not their mom. Now, I have made one exception. I had a young airman who had a weekend off before his girlfriend, he shipped out, and he and his girlfriend wanted to have a place to spend the weekend. Airbnb said no, and I said, I'll do you straight. I'm a veteran, you're in the service, I trust you, and I rented to him. And I even drove him back to the barracks. I lent him and his girlfriend my bikes. That's because I didn't agree with Airbnb's decision. I took that risk.
Now, when I was doing regular rentals, I rented to insurance companies. They paid for it, but the lease was with the people that were living there.
Exactly.
We did just have, there's a local movie production company, cinema production company, and they had a woman booking. We just thought this woman was going to be the guest, and then she 30 minutes before the guest was arriving, said, "Oh, by the way, Katie's gonna be the one staying." Yeah, Janet, definitely, told her this is unacceptable and this is not how we work. We then had to do like a secondary get this woman. We really like to go by the book because you just want to know who is in your home, because we don't have the rental protections and whatnot. So we were able, this woman was wonderful, and it was just kind of great that it happened to be a good circumstance. We got her ID, she was very nice, kind of thing, but we did inform that production company that this is not how it works. You need to have the individual book with you and then reimburse just as other companies do. So I guess that's something to look out for.
How does your insurance company feel about your Airbnb?
How does my insurance company feel about it?
Is there a significant difference in the amount of the cost of your insurance?
They have not said anything one way or the other. I don't know if they necessarily know, but they shouldn't have to know because I've got the extra Airbnb insurance to cover everything anyway. I also happen to have a personal umbrella plan in case I get sued for any number of things that I do. So I think that's well worth it for me because I caused some problems for some people. Gary, would you agree? I've hosted multiple times people coming through to work at the Schuster Center. Right now, I have people working on Les Mis in one of my places. So, I mean, I get all kinds of fascinating people and great guests, and I really enjoy that. I meet some of them, I don't meet others. Some I have long conversations with, some I never see.
Lastly.
But ask your insurance company, because you can buy a rider and it's not that expensive. Let them know that you're actually doing short-term rentals, and there was just a little bit of a rider that we added on.
Not all insurance companies do it, too.
Perfect.
Who are you with?
State Farm.
State Farm?
Yeah, we have Liberty Mutual. They've got it insured properly.
Okay.
And the only stuff that's ever happened, we've had a few things broken, but we don't care. Broken plate. Another one at Goodwill.
The gentleman here that he was saying he cannot get his place insured.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what is it that why they want insurance?
I had insurance and the building got hit by a car. And the claims process was so horrible that I won't go through that company anymore. But then they wouldn't insure me anyway. And then I'm just because it's not occupied yet, or only the downstairs is occupied and the upstairs is not occupied. No underwriters will write a policy for it.
I'll give you a number of
Or they'll do like a cash value policy that's like $5,000.
I'll give you a place because
like,
I had a few of Lutlin's properties that I had sit for a bit and they were not insured, and then when I tried to go to USAA and some other ones affiliated with USAA, they would not insure it because of the time that they were sitting. And I found a insurance company that insured every single one as I was rehabbing them at a little higher rate. And then once the rehab was done, you let them know, then it goes back to a normal rate. But I'll give you that information.
Actually, it's not really high. They're good wise too.
Yeah.
It's not high at all.
Yeah, Casey.
Yeah, I don't think much. His name is actually here.
Are you giving him Casey?
No.
No, yeah.
of course not.
That's the
Yes.
one.
He does.
Are there any other questions?
Will you give him the number? I'll give him.
So we
Yeah,
have
I'll
a
give it
couple
to you.
sheets going around for email
I'll give it
addresses.
to you.
You want to make sure that you get those notifications for the next meeting. It's right there. It's one that, I got that side of the room. I think we're good. Thank you.
Hey, Janet, are we done? We're done. Thank you, everybody.
James made the chili.
Oh, thank you.
And if you ever need really good barbecue brought out to your home, he used to own the Texas Beef and Cattle Company, and he will be glad to cater when you're having a big event and make you some of the best brisket you ever had.
Excuse me.